The revolution is here. A movement of people free to live, work, and choose. We won't tell you what to think. We just demand that you think for yourself. This is Kibbe on Liberty. Cody, how's it going?
Pretty good. Glad to be here.
Thanks for you went to heroic efforts to get up here from Dallas, and I really want to dig into blockchain, Bitcoin, and all sorts of crypto anarchy craziness, and you're the man.
Yeah.
Well, we're hoping you're the man. We'll find out.
I don't want to be the man.
Yeah, because then they'll take you out. But
yeah.
But this all started, we were hanging out in Antigua, Guatemala after something called the Antigua Forum, which is hosted by this fantastic free market university, Francisco Marroquin, and they have a statue of Mises, and they have the Hayek Auditorium.
Atlas Shrugged. They've got all the stuff in the... Yeah.
And they even have, my favorite, a plaque dedicated to Karl Menger, the founder of the Austrian School of Economics. So it seemed like a good place to hang out and discuss some of these ideas, and over much Zacapa, and I think we had a fire going, and we're just hanging out outside, and it was beautiful. And we came up with this idea to have this conversation where me, as an economist that likes Hayek, could somehow start to understand you as a coder and crypto problem-causing person.
And vice versa, you know.
Yeah,
there's a lot to learn from the economists in our space.
So let's, since people probably don't know you, give us a little bit of background on who you are, and I'm going to pour some Zacapa.
Yeah, appreciate that. My background, I was born in South Texas on the largest ranch in the Americas, the King Ranch. Finished high school in San Antonio, got into computers when I was like 10, 11 years old. When you grow up on a ranch, there's not much to do. So my dad brought home a computer and started, figuring out how that thing worked, picked up the manual and kind of taught myself. Kind of watched the web kind of get born, I guess, in like 92, 93. I got on real early. I didn't really understand what the web was. None of us did. It was just sort of this new thing with text that you could click on to go to different places. So started building that, and then got into Unix and Linux, these sort of really hardcore structural infrastructure type systems, and really fell in love with it. It was a natural fit for me, and then kind of built the web over the next 5, 6, 7 years, and then into the 2000s had a short stint with the NSA and went on to work with kind of in social media, doing that kind of stuff. That was all the rage back in the
This isn't like Snowden time, is it?
Yeah, around that same time. Yeah.
Right.
No, I don't know him. No, we never had breakfast. No, I don't. I've never been to Russia. I haven't read this book. But there's a whole series there where, I was working on a lot of technologies, hashtags on Twitter before it was a thing that Twitter even recognized. Co-working, did a conference that was kind of a counter conference to the TED conference called the Bill Conference. A lot of conferences in there.
As in Bill and Ted.
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Yeah, that's tongue in cheek.
Yeah,
we didn't take ourselves too seriously. That's a whole story in and of itself. But and then around 2011, 2012, got into Bitcoin, got in, got out, got in, got out. When it went to 13 cents, it was like, oh my God, 13 cents for one of these things? Like, what are we ever going to, $44,000 today. Yeah. And so as an engineer and someone who likes to create, I needed a different platform. So I moved into things like Ethereum, in an area called smart contracts, which are little applications you can deploy onto the blockchain. And we can get into the technical stuff later. 2017, helped create the ERC 721 standard that we know today as NFTs. Was one of the guys that kind of helped usher that standard in and figure out how it's going to work and all the use cases. And
we're going to talk about that later.
Oh,
because Battaglia is skeptical, but also strangely
intrigued. They just want to make
intrigued.
comics using NFTs.
Yeah. Well, we can do that. Cheers, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Very familiar taste we got here.
Yeah. This was smuggled back from Guatemala, mostly legally. Mostly. So let's and we want to get into kind of blockchain crypto 101, and I saw you actually give this at the Antigua Forum 3 years ago, and it was pretty useful for me as a non-technologist kind of guy.
Sure.
But to lay the framework, I've been libertarian fighting to limit the power of government over our lives my my entire professional career, and it seems like a thankless job. So I've tried everything. I've done politics, and now we've totally abandoned politics, and we're focused on changing the culture and opinion so that people actually understand what this liberty thing is. But particularly in the last 2-3 years, but maybe even going back further, my fallback as a Hayekian is, well, I'm kind of hoping there's a technological solution to this. And I look at all of these decentralized platforms as fundamentally Hayekian in the sense that they very much tap into local decentralized knowledge, and it creates my professor at George Mason, a guy named Don Lavoie, used to talk about a greater social intelligence that came from all these decentralized nodes of people making choices and acting and pursuing their dreams and all that stuff. And so I'm thinking that the more that the central government tries to control technology, the more that there's a hack, there's a workaround.
Yeah.
And that's what we were talking about.
Yeah, it's the old quote off of Star Wars, the tighter your grasp, like sand, it falls to the hands. It's kind of like that. There's also some elements of antifragility, which is a term that was coined in the last, I guess, 15 years, about these systems. The more you fight them, the stronger they get. They respond. Yeah. And when you look at the system, when I say system, I'm talking about, Bitcoin or blockchain or whatever you want to call it. But the system is also the people that are sort of surrounding it, protecting it. And so if you get into, this gets into like kind of sci-fi, kind of complex systems theory around how if you take, once you create order in a certain substrate, these different disparate systems, and they start to combine and you get coordination between them, you get a higher level of order. Well, we're starting, that, and you can play that all the way back through the universe. I mean, through big history, you can go back to the Big Bang, and then through the substrates of what made the getting into physics, and then kind of crawling up through the timelines and getting into even government and what it means to be a state, Westphalian theory, going through all these things, and you start seeing this cooperation leads to a higher level of order. And what's really interesting right now is we've seen that these blockchains sort of look like something that's maybe post-human, sort of getting above, like, we serve it instead of it serving us. The internet, for instance, serves us, but we are the ones that created this thing. We can't turn it off now. It's something bigger than humans. We could go back and turn off the internet. I mean, we can, but these blockchains can't be turned off. And so it's a really, really interesting sort of a transition from, where we were with the internet, where it wasn't supposed to be like this. We weren't supposed to have Facebooks and Googles and this whole manga thing going on. Microsoft, Apple, it was Spain for a while. Now it's manga, with Facebook turning into Meta. And so you're getting this sort of I guess a reimagining of what the internet could or should be or can be now that we have this gift that Satoshi gave us, which was blockchain, and how we can decentralize the stuff and protect it from these people.
I like to say what it should have been, because there was and I among them. There was the first generation led by my beloved lyricist of the Grateful Dead, John Perry Barlow, who talked about this romantic potential of democratizing knowledge, and I was very much in that school, and then going all the way up to what the Trudeau and GoFundMe have done to the Canadian truckers, and we're going to get into that more. It's now sort of a dystopian thing where these tools are tremendously powerful ways to control people, as the Chinese social credit system has shown us. So that the romance has turned into a bit of a dystopian nightmare.
Or getting banned on Facebook on a weekly basis, or that kind of thing, like being put in timeout. Yeah. What?
By who? Who's that guy that did that? To
Jack
me?
Dorsey. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is sort of like I'll call it Internet 2.0, which is sort of cheapening the concept you're talking about. But to me, it's everything, and libertarians and civil libertarians and people that want to sort of democratize prosperity and knowledge. Like, everyone should be excited about this. They shouldn't be afraid. They should know that this is like the alternative to tyranny.
Yeah, and it's guys. If you go back and read Tim Berners-Lee, what he wrote about the web, or HTML and CS, all these different this idea of creating these pages, these places where humans can actually go and read, and it's not through some cryptic, only Cody can do that kind of stuff, and is better. It's like it's stuff that's easier to use. Jimmy Wales did that with Wikipedia. We saw this kind of stuff, but even Wikipedia is now gatekept by different people.
Wikipedia is particularly tragic to me because Jimmy Wales always said this is Hayek inspired project, but now it's been hijacked, I guess is the right word. It's Wokepedia. If you can say it that way.
Yeah.
Write that down. I just made that up. That's pretty cool.
Wokepedia.
Yeah.
I'm gonna register the domain name.
Yeah, grab it right now. But well, I don't want to go to Wokepedia, to be honest with you.
No, we just got to fix it.
Yeah,
just got to fix it.
But why don't we let's take a step back, because and we're going to get into the outrageously authoritarian martial law declared by Trudeau.
Yeah,
I was trying to think of something meaner to call him, but I won't, because this is a family show.
Yeah. It's a family show.
But talk just for people that don't understand what blockchain is. Why is this a revolution?
I kind of hit on that a minute ago about it can't be stopped, and that's a really big piece to it. There's a lot of technological things that it allows for kind of as side effects, but really the biggest hallmark or biggest stripe that we have on it right now is that it's unstoppable, meaning government. It's beyond the jurisdiction of governments. If every government conspired together and they wanted to shut down the entire internet, that's what it would take. Right now, think about that. Shut down the entire internet. You've now made a bigger mess of a situation. I mean, like nothing works anymore. Like nothing. And even then, you still have backup systems. You've got guys that have ham radios that could basically keep the blockchain going. It would require two people with these little computers that are about this big, even smaller, in a closet running, and the network still kind of keeps a heartbeat. There's things like that. So the other piece is that it's we say permissionless, and permissionless means you don't need permission to use it. You can literally walk up to the blockchain and just use it. Now there's some technical pieces there. You can't just walk up to it. You have to know how to. But we have those things. We've got systems that are pretty resilient now that can't be taken down. And so anybody from Venezuela or Cuba or North Korea can always put a transaction onto the blockchain.
And they are.
And they are, yeah. I mean, because the amount of bandwidth it doesn't take like broadband. It doesn't take a 200 megabit connection to like send the stuff up there. You need like a ham radio where you can like that kind of stuff, and you can get these transactions out, and that's what makes it really, really powerful. The second thing, or third thing, I guess, is the fact that it's immutable. So once a transaction goes through, you can't recall that transaction. You can't undo it. You can't pick up the phone and call someone and say, "Hey, someone's stole my I need to do a chargeback," like you can with Visa, and that's good and bad. I mean, there's some good things and bad things about that. I think fraud and those kind of things are always nice to have a safety net, and those systems are being built. However, with Bitcoin as it is now, it's permissionless, so anybody can use it, and it can't be stopped, and it can't be changed. So you can't undo these things. So the idea that like this this Canadian government, their FinTrack or whatever they call it, they pipe up and say, "Oh, we're gonna outlaw it." I was like, "Great, okay, stop them." Like you can't. How do you? We were talking about prohibition earlier.
Right.
How do you stop people from drinking in their garage? Yeah, I mean, how do you can put a law against that, but like, how do you actually enforce it and stop it? You can't. And in fact, what happens is there's a really cool thing called the Barbra Streisand effect. And if you know how to look for this thing, it's you can kind of play history out in front of you. So Barbra Streisand had this huge house in like Malibu or somewhere in the West Coast, and 25 bedrooms, 8-car garage, 3 pools, all this stuff. And this paparazzi photographer in a helicopter was going by taking photos of the lifestyles of the rich and famous, and he published these things online, which was legal, because if it's outside, anything outside is public domain, and if you want privacy on your own property, you need to be the one to prevent people from seeing it. So was it ethical? Yeah, it was invasion of privacy. Like, I mean, like peeking over your neighbor's fence, it's an invasion of privacy. Like, don't do. But the courts are going to be on your side for peeping on that. And so she ended up suing this paparazzi photographer because she wanted the photos taken down. Well, that caught the news, and then everybody went to go see the photo. She was trying to, so it blew up in her face. I've used this plenty of times in my career to get around things if you just know when to look for the pattern. And so today, the Canadian government and FinTrack, or whatever they call it, comes out and says these 32 addresses are banned, right? Well, dude, everybody that had like a little bit of Bitcoin sitting around is like, yeah, I'll throw $25 at them just to kind of put the screws to them, and you can't stop me. What's really interesting, what I'm looking for is, we have large companies like Coinbase sitting up in Canada, and they're operating, with the permission of the government to come in and offer these services. And so if somebody in Canada or the US has Bitcoin on these centralized services, they're the ones that kind of gatekeep what you can do with your Bitcoin, because it's not your Bitcoin, it's Coinbase's. You just have a kind of a claim to it. And so when Coinbase they're going to be kind of caught between the users wanting to give money to the truckers, right, forcing the issue, and their own financial regime in Canada saying, don't allow them to do it. That puts them in a really difficult spot, because like Coinbase is like, oh, power to the people, and like, sovereignty, and well, now your hand is about to be forced, and that's going to be it's going to happen. I mean, like, I know my guys, and I know how they work. They're going to force that issue, because there's a saying that if it's not your keys, it's not your Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And so Coinbase is a hosted solution. So kind of like it's a bank, essentially. They hold your coins for you. You don't get the private key, but you get a nice little email and password, and you can log in and then transact on, they will transact on your behalf. Well, that also means they can also prevent you from doing things they don't want you to do, much like your bank does when you try to do any number of things.
So still centralized.
Coinbase is centralized, right?
Coinbase is centralized.
Now, the nice thing is that Coinbase will allow you to withdraw your Bitcoin and put it into your own wallet. And a wallet is basically just a public and private key. It gets pretty technical, but there's a lot of applications you can use, on your phone, which I don't really recommend. You should probably use a computer. You don't want to be, depending on how much you have. And if it's like $50, like, okay, phone's probably all right. But if you have quite a bit of holdings, you don't want to be using your phone for that. So maybe, get a computer that's suitable for that sort of thing. And so, yeah, the idea there is that you buy on Coinbase, and then you would take that and self-custody it. And so now it's yours. No one can stop you from signing those transactions, because you actually own the Bitcoin. You control it, not going through Coinbase as an intermediary.
So and the reason some of your friends are salivating over this clash is that it's going to push towards more decentralization and move to the next, whatever the next generation is from Coinbase.
Yeah, and there was probably a lot of, this kind of works in both ways. There was probably a lot of people out there that were like, truckers, bunch of dudes like hanging out, like, causing trouble, good for them, kind of, whatever. But with this new Trudeau, this Emergency Powers Act or whatever they enacted, like, they're starting to pull a lot of people that were kind of like, on the thing, going like, okay, now you've done it. Yep. Like, it's no longer about the vaccine. It's about this tyranny. And that's what it is, or police state, where the police make the rules and they get to enforce whatever they want. Like, you're really starting to open some really bad cans of worms here, and it's only going to embolden the movement. The Barbra Streisand. I mean, you're going to have people from all over the world saying, yeah, send money to Canada, because like those guys need it, and the hell with, what the government, what their government says, their organizational powers.
Yeah, it's kind of shocking, because he's basically invoking war powers against the guys that make sure that food gets on the table in Canada. I feel like it's a bad look. We'll see how it goes. I'm biased because
it's just the old regime that doesn't understand how these things work, and it's painfully obvious. So if you look at the list, it says, like, I think there was, if I can remember, Bitcoin was like the first one mentioned, and then it was like Cardano and like Ethereum Classic, and like these lists of addresses, and the very last one was Monero. So anybody in crypto that knows anything about crypto, anything about blockchain, knows that Monero is it's the most secure and private blockchain out there. Period. I mean, there's Zcash, there's other ones out there that promise that, but Monero is like the one that anybody that knows cryptography, like, nope, Monero double ring signatures that is the most private. So in other words, with Bitcoin, you can see who sent who how much. On the Monero network, you can't see who has. I mean, You can't see how much was being sent between two parties and who those two parties were. So how does the government even begin? I mean, there's not even a ledger to look at. All they did was they provided free advertising for this thing. So if anybody was like on the fence about this and they're like, yeah, I really don't like, I'm a billionaire and I have a bunch of money, I'm going Monero. I'm going to send it to them like that. And so I'm clean. There's no way you can track it back to me unless the government comes into my house and, takes my keys, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, geez, like,
I mean, part of it was the fascinating trajectory of the tyranny in Canada, and by the way, like this isn't really a Canadian problem. I think our government in the U.S. would love to do the same damn thing to us, and they're trying and they're passing laws and all sorts of stuff that I'm not totally fluent on, but it started with the charade of GoFundMe, which claims to be crowdsourced, bottom-up, grassroots, just arbitrarily deciding, you know what, we're not going to let you give to those guys.
Yeah, and it's, they get to pick winners and losers. It's and companies should have the right to do what they want. I mean, if GoFundMe wants to do that, that's great. But now if you have a second company pop up, unfortunately, it's going to be like a red and a blue split in this country.
Yeah.
If the government starts to get in, starts picking winners and losers, and then now you have people going, okay, well, we need something that the government can't control, right? So that you're just feeding them, you're just accelerating what's already gonna, which is fine. I look back at it and go, this is a natural progression because we now have a new tool. If you try to do this in 10 years ago, right, they would have just like, okay, well, freeze the bank accounts and you'd have people like mailing money in envelopes or something like that. But now there's this alternative, this giant exit sign from their system, and it says here's the workaround. Wow, man, that's a really empowering piece there. And people are waking up to it because, if you watch the Super Bowl, there were like friggin' 20 commercials on crypto.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like the Overton window is shifting and people are now, even bankers that I've talked to are starting to, 5 years ago, like, is this thing really going to last? They're no longer asking that. They're like, so when should I get in? Like, I mean, this is getting kind of big, isn't it? Like, they're starting to realize that this whole internet fad is no longer a fad.
Right.
It's like, it's getting better every week. We're seeing new and new. Every hour we're seeing new and new developments and progressions. And it's like if you try to get online in 1993, the modem was screaming at you. It was a real bitch to get online. But over time we made it easier, and now you just walk around with your phone and it like auto connects to Wi-Fi and like automatically puts the password in, and you're just like on.
Yeah.
And that's where crypto will get. You just got to realize we're in the first inning. We're in like 1993, and there's like some geeks out there going, "This is the future," and people are going, "That's really slow," and like the JPEGs load like this, and it's like, yeah, but like we can make that better, and one day we'll get like Game of Thrones like 4K in our car, on 4G, like, how far we've come. So that's the natural progression of technology. I mean, and it comes quick. And to make another parallel on that, if you go back to the early 90s, we only had 100, maybe 1 million programmers in the entire world, and half of them weren't even like aware of like what the internet was. Well, dude, you've got like, a stupid amount, like 250 million developers in the world. Well, maybe not that much, but a massive amount of developers now. So the amount of work being done and the amount of minds being dedicated to this is 20-fold what it was in 1993.
Yeah. Like,
so wow, it's going to come through much faster. So it's like, living right now and watching this on a day-to-day basis, you're not having to wait a month for progress. It's like happening every day.
So when we were hanging out, I got to bring this back to Hayek. And by the way, part of watching Kibbe on Liberty is there is a small hardcore group of viewers who drink every time I quote Hayek, which is more perhaps than I should. But one of us, I don't remember who, but pulled up this cool video of Hayek. He's talking about his book, The Denationalization of Money, and he totally anticipates Bitcoin.
Yeah. A sly roundabout way. Is what he says.
Yeah, it's like we're
a sly roundabout way. It's like, wow, man, 1984, 83.
It was something like that.
Yeah.
And maybe one of our Brett, look this up. Do you know what I'm talking about? This is just like Joe Rogan, where Joe Rogan has a guy that looks up stuff to make sure that Joe Rogan doesn't misquote the truth. But it's he's like, and he's basically talking to Ron Paulers that want to end the Fed and blockchainers that say, no, we're going to work around this, because he says, look, we're not going to end central banking. It's not going to happen because the entire system and all the power structures around it feed off of fiat money and the way that they manipulate our lives and transfer wealth from the have-nots to the haves and all this stuff that we crazy Austrians talk about. There's got to be some crafty way to work around it. Did you find it?
Do you want the quote?
Yeah.
In 1984, Hayek said presciently, "I don't believe we shall ever have a good money again before we take the thing out of the hands of government. That is, we can't take them violently out of the hands of government. All we can do is by some sly roundabout way introduce something they can't stop."
I mean, that's...
So
Dude, it's
Logan, could you hear that?
I think you'll be able to hear it. We'll subtitle it.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll subtitle it because
it's
everything.
Then that quote, like, it gives me chills when I read that, because I was like, sly roundabout way. It's like he's like, some way to make a ledger that could be controlled but not controlled by the government. If you had like some sort of decentralized peer-to-peer money system on the computers, but we don't really have an internet yet, so like, you know, he's like right there, and it's like, just give it time, dude. Let the computer science guys work on that problem. And then Satoshi sort of gave us that magical, you know, formula on how it works, and it's, you know, we're 12 years into it and it's still working like planned.
And by the way, just to give a shout out to the Austrians, there's a reason that Hayek understood something that hadn't happened yet, because the entire basis of the Austrian school, particularly Karl Menger, talked like one of his most important works was the spontaneous evolution of money. He wouldn't have used the word spontaneous, but he was talking about why money matters and how it works, and it works because people see value in it, and it's not only a medium of exchange, but it's a store of value. And eventually, not just Menger, but Mises would talk about commodities like gold, for the simple reason that they couldn't be manipulated by government.
Right. Yeah. That's a huge piece to a lot of these cryptocurrencies.
And you go back to when Nixon closed the gold window. They took our gold from us, and we've been working on a hack.
Yeah.
Like what's the next iteration of this? And I feel like we're at the cusp of that right now.
Yeah. There's a really great so. You know, admittedly, this space is extremely complicated right now. It's very complicated technology, and there's a lot of, you know, if you go back to, I like to reference the late '90s. I was like in the middle of all the .com boom and bust and like all the great and bad ideas, and it was really hard to discern good from bad back in the day. I mean, there were people out there that had the tools and the knowledge to be able to do that, but for the average consumer, it was like really hard to pick, like, you know, is dogfood.com going to be the big winner? I'm like, okay, oh no, it was going to be books. Oh, well, why wasn't it dog food? Like, well, I mean, there's a lot behind that. There's a lot more technical reasons why books at Amazon won over versus dog food. And in this space, it's really, there's 16,000 different currencies that are out there. Some of them are mimetic, like Doge or Shiba Inu, or some of these like meme coins that sort of pop up, you know, when there's like a Super Bowl blooper, they pop one up real fast, everybody runs in. It's kind of it's just fun. They mean nothing. It's not a big deal. Like if you look at the supply, like if you actually look at the supply, like emission of Doge, you'd be like, well, I would never touch that. I mean, like, if you don't like inflation here, then like, why would you do that? But it's fun, and people enjoy it, and there's like, it's whatever. Then you get to these different platforms that are around smart contracts, actually disintermediating a lot of the functions of banks, like escrows and insurance and these kind of things. You know, if you look at insurance, I mean, there's a lot of money being made off of insurance. Like, if we could somehow come up with a protocol that allowed for us to pool our risk together and our assets, and then take out the profit, like, we'd all pay lower. And that's what these blockchain protocols will allow us to create. And you can get very, very creative with these things, and we're just not seeing it. That's in a sort of a subset of blockchain called DeFi, or decentralized finance.
Yeah.
And that's mainly where I focus most of my attention. There's a really great analogy that I'll give you for the largest smart contracting platform in the world is Ethereum. So if you look at like the king of coins, it's always going to be Bitcoin, or at least it has been. And you know, Bitcoin, I think, has 40% of the entire market cap of all cryptocurrencies. So 40%, like that's a lot. Like, that's going to be hard to dethrone that person or that coin. Bitcoin is a lot like gold. The reason why it's worth something is that you can't flood the market tomorrow. We have like a fixed supply. There's about 19 million that have been created, and 21 million will ever be created. And it's on this sort of emission curve that like really teeters out. And I think it's not till 2140, so we have like another 120 years of emissions. But every like 3 years it halves. You have a halvening. So it started off with 50 coins per block, and then it went down to 25, 12.5, 6.25, on down. And then pretty soon it'll be just, tiny amounts. But the price at that time should be a lot higher. So the dollar value should follow that curve. So if you look at like what, people ask, why does Bitcoin have value? It's like, well, for the same reason gold has value. It's not because you can use it. You can use gold in certain applications, in industrial applications, but not for $1,500 an ounce. It doesn't command that. So we have so you have this guarantee that you won't find a giant hunk of gold in the ground. That's what protects gold's value. And actually, if you get down to it, a friend of mine shared this with me. A dear friend of mine named Fred. He shared this idea about. What really protects the value of gold is the actual atomic structure of the atom, that you can't create more of them. And if you like, there's a ceiling to what gold would be worth, and that's the amount that alchemy comes in, where you can actually create gold.
Yeah.
You can create gold right now, but it's like $4,000 an ounce. So you really shouldn't. You should just go buy it, and that's what protects the value of it. So it's actually on the molecular level. And when you get into Bitcoin, you have the same sort of thing. There's only 21 million and some extra numbers after that will ever be created. Now, you'd have to convince a lot of people that are holding on to this scarce resource to somehow give up more of this resource, right? Like, and that's really hard to do. It's like, hey guys, you want to bring in some other material like gold. We're going to call it gold and just like extend the supply. Like, no, they're going to protect their investment, because that would have their investment if they doubled the supply. These are like very basic economic principles that that the blockchain community is having to learn on the fly, because we're a bunch of programmers and hackers that like hang out, and program all day and learn about complex systems. What we didn't do is we didn't go to college to learn about economics. We didn't do these deep reads and these all these different philosophies and how they relate and all these kind of things. There's a whole community out there. This is kind of what we're talking about.
I'm guessing both communities, and I can speak for my community.
Yeah.
We struggled to meet girls.
Yeah.
Present company accepted, of course.
So, there's probably a healthy bit of that. If you've ever gone to a blockchain conference, it's pretty, it smells pretty bad. And,
Except that they're probably rich now.
Getting back to it. So there's a good analogy there. So Bitcoin is like gold. And if you look at something like Ethereum, what gives it value is the fact that it can actually perform a function. It can actually do something. Right? Like if you have a hunk of gold, what can you do with it? Well, you can protect it, but you really can't do it. It doesn't serve any sort of purpose. So when you look at Ethereum, you say, well, what, it has it will basically allow you to execute these smart contracts, these applications, this decentralized finance, really, really sophisticated tooling that's on the blockchain, much like oil. The reason why oil has value is you can get plastics out of it, energy to push your car down the road, make tires out of it. You can do all kinds of really great things with it. So it gives it utility. And there's a big difference there, and that's why you see sort of a decoupling sometimes of their values.
So, for people that aren't into crypto yet, why should they? Like they're intimidated, and they've heard all these stories about there's nothing there. You just addressed this issue, but why should people do this? And maybe it has something to do with what the government's doing to the currency that they hold.
Yeah, just turn it around. I usually for one, I don't have time to like sit in line at the grocery store and like argue with somebody about this stuff. So I kind of keep quiet. That's why I don't wear like a Bitcoin shirt, or I don't advertise this stuff, because I really need to be working on solving problems, not trying to educate one-offs, that I bump into at the grocery store. But the way I would like to see people do is turn it around on them. So like, why are you holding the dollar? Like they're printing up more of that stuff. Don't you realize that? Like their emission, like they're spewing out more dollars. You're looking at effectively 15%, right? So like if your house was declining by 15% per year, every one of those people would tell you, sell it. Like get out from underneath that asset. That's a bad asset to hold on to. It's depreciating, right? You're living in it, so it gives you a place to live. but like that's not a very good investment. So why would you want to hold, like right now, I mean, I think everybody listening to this would agree, you don't want to hold on to cash right now. You want assets, you want land, you want gold, you want, well, why not Bitcoin? I mean, it has all the same properties of gold, store of value, all this kind of stuff, but like it's actually got some extra functionality. You can like move it around pretty easy. You don't have to like dig a hole in your backyard.
It's hard to steal it.
It's hard to steal if you know what you're doing. Yeah, I mean, if you leave your laptop unlocked at a Starbucks, like someone's going to come by and there's that possibility. But keeping the stuff safe, it's a number about this long that you got to make sure no one sees. Write that on. I tell people all the time, write it down on a piece of paper, hide it somewhere really obscure in your house. That's about as good as you can get. You might want to put another backup copy somewhere else also, but
yeah,
protect the paper.
But that's I mean, there's this skepticism right now, and in large part because of like volatility.
Compared to what?
Yeah, compared to what?
Compared to what? Just fire back with that when they say, "Well, it's so volatile." Compared to what? I mean, look at your stock market. I mean, you had these same retraces, and sometimes they're coupled, and they just go, "Oh, well, they're coupled for a while," and then one of them will shoot off in a different direction. It's like, well, which one? Or zoom out. Tell them to zoom out on the graph. Well, look, it's down from that. It's like, yeah, but it's up, 50,000% since 2012.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'll play that game all day long.
It's also the window. Like the skeptics will take a slice of volatility that doesn't show the trend from. And by the way, I'm pissed that you were into Bitcoin when it was 15 cents.
I sold a lot of it. I bought it for 8 and sold it for 12, and bought it for 13 and sold it for 15. I didn't like.
You should have stuck.
I should have. Yeah.
The long game.
I wouldn't be here if I did. So maybe.
Terry and I still theoretically own a wallet that we bought when we were drunk in Prague, because we were at the Institute for Crypto Anarchy, and it was the first time I was able to buy a beer with crypto, and I thought that was really cool. Yeah. So we probably put like $40 on. This is long enough ago that this would be real money.
Yeah.
I don't know where that is.
Yeah, there was a like a hacker den up in Vancouver. It was like in a basement. It was really cool. They had all kinds of. It was like a bunch of crypto frat dudes hanging out. And I was up in Vancouver hanging out with these guys doing the Bill conference, and we went into their lair and stuff. And there's a beer vending machine. It had a QR code with. So if you sent money to this, like if you sent Bitcoin to this QR code, it would spit out a beer. Kind of nice, right? It was kind of it took like 12 minutes for it to actually like for the transaction to like get through, and like finally you get your beer. So it wasn't very usable or like fast, but it did work. And well, I thought it was pretty cool, so I sent a photo of it to like a bunch of my homies back in Dallas when I was living there. I sent them the QR code. They all hammered the QR code for the beer. Like we were having beer spitting out every 5 minutes. I was like, this is awesome, stuff like that.
That was kind of like, that was the experience we had. Like it was a total pain in the ass to actually ultimately pay for the beer, but I thought it was cool.
Dude, remember trying to listen to like radio on the internet back in like 95?
Yeah.
Like, it sort of worked, and it was really cool because it was like, I'm listening to a radio station, like an FM radio station in France, but it like would chop out every 2 minutes, and it's like, why don't you just use the regular terrestrial FM? But things get better, and then
things get better.
Yeah.
It turns out. So I want to take a break, and we're thinking for this that we're going to do like a mega 2-episode version of this, because I want to start applying this to all of the problems of censorship, and we've touched on authoritarianism, and how we hack the government so that we have freedom again. So stay tuned for that. We're going to get through this whole bottle before we're done, and it's such a clumsy close. Cheers. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that show, make sure that you like and subscribe. Click the little bell so that you get notifications. And if you consume this via podcast, go wherever you want to go. We're everywhere. Kibbe on Liberty. The revolution starts now.